Hi, I'm Alex, I'm an archaeologist. This is Archaeomodo and I'm today at the gallo-ligurian settlement of Entremont. Stay tuned. Today we are at a very interesting site before the Roman time. So we have seen a lot of Roman stuff in the past episode. This time it's something in between. I'm just standing on the rampart of the gallo-ligurian oppidum of Entremont. This oppidum is really interesting because of many things. But one, because it was only funded in around 175 BC. So before the Romans arrived here, but only shortly before the Romans arrived here. And it was here especially built to be or to serve as a religious or even political center for this Ligurian tribe here. And what is so interesting here is that we are just above the modern city of Aix-en-Provence, the later Roman colony of Aquae-Sextienne. But also that if we look closely here from this rampart, we are on the summit of the highest mountain here, we could actually look towards Marseille here. And Marseille was a Greek colony, Massilia. And we know from ancient literary sources that the Massilians, the Greeks, wrote letters to the Romans that their trading caravans would often be looted by the indigenous population in the hinterland. So here we can connect the ancient literary sources very well with what we can find here, because from this oppidum you could overlook all the trade routes coming from Massilia to the hinterland. So this oppidum here was excavated in the 20th century mostly. Only 1/5 of the oppidum is excavated, and it's not that well preserved as other things I already showed you, but nonetheless it's really interesting. So what they did here is they founded over an old Gallic sanctuary from prehistoric times, a small fortified settlement here just on top. This center city, or the upper city, was founded about 175 BC. It's quite small, it just measures a bit about 1 hectare, but the internals and the internal structures here that were built into the rampart, they actually are rectangular, so it's a really orthogonal grid we can find here, which is really interesting. And we are approaching the first ruins now. And what we will see here are many small houses with small chambers. They were often just 1 or 2 stories high. But as I mentioned here in the first city, in the upper city, the grid system of the streets is very rectangular, so it's a planned city, which is really interesting. It was just built from the scratch here. And as we are walking one of the main streets, you see that we are here at the crossroad. And here comes the next, so that they are forming small insulae of buildings in the middle of these street crosses. They were all excavated here, so I'm sure the excavators would know exactly which building was used as what, but mainly they were dwellings. But we can find some interesting things here. But before we look at that, because they're mostly found on the lower city. Here we have some internal structures like this bench. And some water channels here. But this is all, as you can see, the upper city. Then the lower city was only funded some 30 years later or so. So they became aware that the first fortification was too small, so they enlarged everything by a big amount, so that they had a settlement of well over 3 hectares here. But still the upper part was fortified all around and stayed like this, and then they made a second fortification all around it. So what we see here, for instance, this was the old city wall of the upper fortification, and they built here these square towers, staying out of this fortification. And this is already highly skilled fortification technique, which we know from the Hellenistic world. So they were knowing what they were doing here when building a fortification. You needed these kind of towers to defend the actual wall. As we have seen on the other side, looking to Massilia, there's actually a steep slope going down, so topographically it is really easy to defend. But on this side, that's not the case, so you could approach this hill on a very shallow slope. So you needed to enforce the wall here, and this you could do with the towers, because as the enemy approached the wall, it's actually hard to defend it or to shoot at the enemy, because you had to lean over the actual fortification wall, so you could also be shot. But being inside of one of these towers empowered you to shoot the enemy from the side and be for yourself the best shielded and in security still. So here we should have another tower of the old fortification wall, exactly here. And then here's another really interesting thing, which is showing us something of the culture of this gallo-iberian of these gallo-ligurians, because they actually didn't use scripture, so we don't know much about them, just what the Roman sources gave us. Here we have one long porticus building, which has had like different columns just in the center here, staying on these stones, and it was all roofed. So, and what archaeologists found here are many heads which were possibly coming from beheaded enemies. That was one of the traditions we know also from the literary sources, that this tribe would behead all the enemies, the defeated enemies, and show them in a central room. And as we are here, very in the center of the city, this was possibly the room where they showed all the beheaded enemies they had here. Quite cruel, I would say. Yeah. So we have the upper city on this part, with this porticus hall and the old fortification wall dividing this part of the city to the lower part of the city, which is the newer city. Nonetheless, it is not that orthogonally planned, so the streets are much more like narrow and making corners and so on. And we could possibly think that more of the lower class lived here, because we have also like, many signs of handicraftsmanship here. And this is what I'm looking for, because here are some signs of handicraft activity. Let's have a look. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this is really interesting. This is the base part of an oil or grape press. So what they had here was like a big weight, and they would press the oil out of the fruits, which would then be collected in this small channel and then into a bigger vessel, pottery container, just like that piece I just found here, which is part of a bigger so-called dolium. So a huge pottery vessel which would be put here into the earth, and actually here used to be one that was excavated, and there was a big pot underneath here. Possibly they just put the oil directly in there or something. So really interesting. You can see that there are many walls remaining with many small chambers, so it's impossible to understand everything here. Yeah, I've seen something else up there. Let's go there. Okay, this is here with these 3 channels. That's for sure used to be some sort of an oven. So they would make the fire here and then it would be heated up there. So this kind of ovens you could use for different purposes, and as I have read that they don't actually know for what it was used. You could use it for making bread, or even to work with iron material, or yeah, not for pottery, but yeah, with iron working and bread. Here's another furnace, a bigger one. So here you could make the fire inside and then cook whatever you need to cook on top of it. Yeah, as you can see here on the lower city, they're more like the artisan quarter of the settlement. So what we are interested, or always interested in, are the fortifications of those sites. And they are really, really nice here. So the fortification walls are now on the left side, and those fortifications are the newer fortifications built around 150 BC. With one central street here, and then again the artisanal quarter here. And what we can already see are that they channeled the water up here. So another oil press. Here's another oil press. Now they use the streets also for collecting the water, because as you wouldn't have a fountain up here, you need to collect the water actually. And we are here at the back side of the wall. So here are some walls staying orthogonal to the wall, towards the wall. And they are possibly also supporting the wall and its weight, and that it doesn't fall to the inside. But they could also hold some rooms and other things, because this I just have seen here. Yeah, this seems to be some sort of a small sanctuary or something. This could be interpreted as an altar. They are often standing like just in the middle of a room like this. I don't know what the rest is here actually. Yeah, I don't know. So what they found here are also water channels which were used to bring out the water behind the wall. So that was important, that the pressure beneath the wall would not get too big, so that could make the wall collapse. But I can't find them unfortunately here. But now let's have a look at the walls from the outside, which is pretty spectacular. Ah, here's one of these water channels, yes. Here's one of these channels which were used to bring down out the water behind the wall. Very nice architectural feature. But then look at this. Here we have the wall made out of big quarry stones. So unlike the wall on the other side, which we go shortly after, this wall is highly representative, made out of huge stone blocks. And then here we have already the first bastion. So they are not square as in the old fortification. They are though much bigger and almost oval in structure. And they are standing like, I would guess, estimate 3 meters apart from the wall. And then here, every 30-40 meters or so, there's the next bastion. Just interesting how they made the corner here, and the stones are actually overlapping each other. So one stone is going that way, the next is going that way, the next is going that way. So they were really highly skilled builders using Greek fortification technique here in southern France. And then here again the next bastion. So the walls were estimated like 6 meters high and they had a strength of around 3 meters. And just imagine this still standing up here. Made quite an impression, and that directly at the frontier to the Gallo world, here to the Greeks at Massilia. And I told you that the Greeks from Massilia asked the Romans to help them with those Gallic people on the hinterland, which were like not very nice to their actual trade routes. So the Romans came here in 123 BC and besieged this oppidum. This oppidum also fell, and we have traces of this siege, which is really interesting. So we have ballistic projectiles, Roman ballistic projectiles found inside of the city. So from its foundation in 175 to the siege of the Romans in 123, the city only lived like 70-80 years or so, which is a really short time. And it's really interesting that they founded this city here just shortly before the Romans would actually capture all of the Provence region here. And then 100 years later, Julius Caesar would come and integrating entire France into Roman territory. Yeah, now let's just head to the south of the fortification, where I still want to show you one last feature. So at the end of this episode, I would like to show you one interesting feature of the fortifications here. Because here we have one, or the only good remaining gate of the city. It's lying on the most southern flank of the entire oppidum. And as you can see, it's not very wide here. And I'm just coming out now. And here we are standing just in front of it. The wall continues to both sides here. We can see that the wall actually contains small quarry stones and some bigger ones in between. So the nice thing about this celiport is for what it was used, because it's quite small. You have seen the stairs going up there, so it's not very comfortable to use this as a daily gate to enter the city, and it was not used for that. It was used in case of warfare, of a siege. If the attacking soldiers were running against the ramparts and against the big gates, the soldiers from inside, the defending soldiers, would use this gate to secretly come out of the city, to send out some troops, and then to fall into the flanks of the besieging enemy. And then quickly retract into the safeness of the walls. So this was used if an attacker, for instance, was already like close to the gates or something, just to give the defending part more momentum and more time to retract the enemy. Yeah, that's it from this nice oppidum just over Aix-en-Provence. And as always, please subscribe. We'll see us next week with the next video. Ciao!